What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. We are the Distorted Theorists, and if you haven't heard by now, it is official, Peter. Nintendo and Sony are doing a live-action Legend of Zelda film.
I know, but before we actually get into our discussion today, we always want to take a moment to thank everyone for stopping by. If you're interested in this type of content, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and do whatever you want. Comment, say, my God, that flannel looks amazing. But before we discuss my fashion taste,
we are about to give you guys and girls a full countdown of what titles in the Legend of Zelda gaming franchise we feel will lend the most to this cinematic film.
Now, as we know, there's a ton of titles in the franchise, and some will lend more of these points than others, which is actually going to be reflected in our list. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Coming in at number 12, Four Swords Adventure, and Triforce Heroes. These games all have one thing in common: a would-be multitude of links on screen. And unfortunately, we are trying to create an audience, not confuse one.
We know this initial film will be used to introduce its viewers to the main protagonist Link, his companions, and their world. Therefore, we assume studios wouldn't be foolish enough to perplex audiences with multiple iterations of our hero on screen this early. We'll be lucky if we get to see a Shadow Link on screen, let alone 3 or 4 of one. Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures are also two of the shortest games in the franchise, leaving little to draw on to make a compelling film that viewers will care about. And as these stories take place mid-timeline, introducing baddies that we should already know and care about would be too time-consuming or would ultimately end up feeling rushed and lackluster. Triforce Heroes not only deals with much of the previous same issues, but maybe tenfold when having to rely on an even lesser known evil such as Lady Maud. She would simply be overshadowed by the primary villain Ganon, who, let's face it, we'd all be paying to see. Not every title can be a hit, and it's for those exact reasons that these games collectively fall last on our list.
Leading in at number 11, The Legend of Zelda and the Adventures of Link. While one would expect a cinematic first to be based off the game that started it all, we unfortunately don't think this should be the case when it comes to our beloved Legend of Zelda.
Due to increasing additions to lore and the now thrice-spliced convoluted timeline, the initially released Legend of Zelda and its sequel, The Adventure of Link, actually takes place towards the end of a now richer and established storyline, and while both groundbreaking in their own right, don't hold the weight they once did. As titles released in the NES era of gaming, they are very two-dimensional, without much meat to character development or world building. While arguably great games in their time, there isn't much to elaborate on to construct a full movie or film series thereafter. Zelda games since have only continued to expand on their grandeur, quite frankly leaving these birthing games in the dust. So it's hard to imagine these titles placed on an artist's storyboard and someone actively pushing to convert them into film. We suggest these titles are perhaps best kept as hidden Easter eggs for eagle-eyed fans, or used as a great one-liner callback such as, "It's dangerous to go alone. Take this!"
Washing up at number 10, Link's Awakening. While technically this game is a sequel to A Link to the Past, this one still feels like the first title that has plausible ability to be brought on screen.
One could heavily argue that this film would only make sense if it were aimed at a younger audience. This is mostly because, well, while the premise of landing on a stranded island sparks a great storytelling opportunity, having your main character try and find 8 musical instruments to wake a glamorous windfish in a giant egg is a bit far-fetched for the live-action world. This was a very simple game in our opinion, and having to make a movie confined solely on an entire island dreamscape might not be the best choice if Sony hopes to see a future with Nintendo. The only saving grace here is that Link's Awakening has a massive cult following, which gives it potential, but not enough to move it further up on our list.
Shrinking in at number 9, The Minish Cap. Another little game that has potential to make it on the big screen. but once again may only be successful if it's targeted at younger audiences.
Seeing Link shrink down to minish size in what we can only assume would be visually akin to Marvel's Ant-Man installments might not be as exciting as it is problematic. It isn't a fresh or new concept anymore as it was at the time of the game's release in the early 2000s. While we are sure the films would be comedic banter between Link and his enchanted talking hat Eslo has all the makings of a light-hearted action-adventure, it might not carry the grit that die-hard fans would like to see in a kickoff film. Admittedly, while the main antagonist Vati is no Ganon, we do believe they are intriguing enough to carry the role as our hero's first foe in the series, but hopefully only to build to the bigger bad in the end. Honestly, we are very unsure if its backstory of Vati and a build to a Four Swords arc would be enough to capture new audiences or satisfy the seasoned ones.
Tag teaming in at number 8, Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. One holds the essence of nature, the other holds the essence of time, but both hold a special place in our heart when it comes to The Legend of Zelda on screen.
These ones may only be further along on our list for the fact that they both have huge cinematic and sequential promise. And while they do share some parallel story beats, they are both vastly different in the trained eyes of a true Zelda fan. One can easily picture Oracle of Seasons kicking off the film's franchise by using visually stunning wisps between the four seasons and their physical impact on screen. Watching Link use the Rod of Seasons to bend nature to his will to progress in his adventure could draw some creative storytelling, but would it be enough to hold our attention? In its conclusion, the ending of the film could bleed seamlessly into Oracle of Ages, which cinematically could be quite the experience when dealing with the passage of time. And for those hardcore fans who know of a rumored unreleased third game called Oracle of Secrets, maybe now it's time for the big reveal in a different capacity. The games do boast a possible climactic boss battle ending with the nefarious Twin Rova, which fans know ultimately leads to the cliff-hanging revival of Ganon. And, as the only ever Zelda games to release simultaneously, who's to say the film studio doesn't film two movies at the same time and release them the same day, making us all head to the cinemas for a double feature.
Gliding in at number 7, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. As Game of the Year in 2017, Breath of the Wild has cemented its legacy, almost guaranteeing that it would be a hit at the global box office.
Almost certain to open with its war-torn Calamity backstory, bleeding into the awakening of our hero Link in the desolate future, it would make perfect cinematic sense to capitalize on such a rich history. To also give credit where it's due, this is possibly the most likely version of Hyrule we will ever see in theaters. With its sprawling landscapes and multifaceted biomes, each provides a unique challenge for our hero. Allowing audiences to follow Link as he traverses a vast wasteland in search of four divine beasts with the intent to stop a resurrecting Ganon has all the elements to make a stunning visual and on-screen spectacle. However, Breath of the Wild does lean heavily on the previous knowledge of many key characters such as Impa, Zelda, and the individual racial tribes. Having taken place at the far end of the franchise's timeline, this could potentially lead to cluttered introductions and lackluster appearances for average moviegoers. Coupled with the fact that its sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, deals generally with the same landscape and previously mentioned historical problems, these films may be best suited for a future release, not necessarily to kick off the film franchise quite yet.
Sailing in at number 6, The Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks. From cel shading to live action, don't let the baton waving fool you. This would be one film that could set sail on the future of The Legend of Zelda in cinema.
With potential to be one of the most visually stunning entries should they choose this more risky and costly route, Wind Waker would need Nintendo's backing bucks to make it float. Akin to films such as Avatar: Way of the Water, the budget to incorporate the mostly sea-covered terrain would be their only drawback, but if achieved, would be glorious from an IMAX theater seat. With a fairly linear story of Link trying to stop our villain Ganon, who started capturing elf-eared girls in order to suss out Zelda's pedigree, it may be an easy-to-follow film for newcomers to the genre, yet it has enough substance to appease die-hard fans. Pair this with the King of Red Lions as the protagonist's light-hearted and trusty sidekick, it could quickly turn into a mystical buddy cop masterpiece. Sitting firmly at the middle of our list, its potential for the already established Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks sequels puts it ahead of some of the previous contenders in the eyes of a film studio, although this could be a drawback as well due to their less than ideal performance along Wind Waker's tenure.
Warping in at number 5, A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, with the ability to adapt the classic story of good and evil and the fight between light and dark. Nintendo and Sony could take us back to where the struggle truly began.
As a game that was released early enough in the franchise to have captured the hearts of many budding Legend of Zelda fans, A Link to the Past has the notoriety to draw us all into theater seats and be wowed by a classic that we played as a kid. Having taken place in a time when the previous hero was defeated, the studio could position the film in such a way that allows it to focus on setting up a prequel with flashbacks, memories, or Easter eggs, instead of the accustomed and expected flow toward a sequel. With that said, if handled correctly, the film could also set up a sequel in the same instance, allowing a guessing game for viewers as to where it'll go if successful enough at the box office. Shedding insight into A Link Between Worlds, a subtle introduction or hint of Lorule can drive viewers to learn more about the world below. And seeing Link turning into a painting by accident or something to that effect may feed our theories even more. While a film adopting this title would have to tastefully handle an evil wizard who banishes our hero to an underworld, all while they try to resurrect a yet unknown Ganon, we believe witnessing our hero's quest for the Master Sword would be enough to turn anyone into a lifelong fan of the franchise.
Morphing in at number 4, Twilight Princess. As far as compelling storytelling goes, Twilight Princess may actually be the epitome of marketable Zelda lore.
Similar to the previously mentioned Link Between Worlds, we get insight to yet another plane of existence parallel to the Hyrule we know and love. A race called the Twilight exists in a more unnatural, monochrome world, which our hero is haphazardly thrust into. To witness as he's forced to learn the suffering and feel the true pain of this counterpart society would be an edgy and gripping tale to tell on screen. This would be a story of a cursed Link, one forced to roam as the wolf for half of the film while guided by the suspect and crass Midna, an unlikely duo that would provide an opportunity for the studio to flex its visual effects muscles. And while the backstory of Midna and her people may require somewhat of an info dump, we are sure that seeing the splice between worlds unfolding on the big screen would be something desired by fans everywhere, not to mention the lycanthrope transformations would draw quite the feeling of awe. While the antagonist Vant is no Ganondorf, they are an enthralling magic user not to be reckoned with, keeping our hero busy until the Gerudo King is revealed at its end. Truly deciding if this would be better used as a sequel or used to set up one are yet to be determined.
Cycling in at number 3, Majora's Mask. While one could argue that starting a franchise with an in-game sequel might not be the smartest route, we firmly believe that this title has enough of a cult following to lead the charge.
The ability to introduce our titular hero and flesh out a small town of Termina with its many NPCs, all while the perpetually nearing moon looms overhead, is something we as fans can only geek out over. The time limit that serves as a motivation for our protagonist could be wildly successful, especially if the studio chose to give the audience a glimpse of a fabricated, destructive ending should the hero fail. Only then to have us, the viewers, witness the hero rise to change fate. Juggling multiple masks, personalities, and transformations could be stimulating story-wise for newcomers and old, with cinematics akin to Jim Carrey's The Mask. Allowing us to get to know Link while also fleshing out some of the races and their troubles could create a masterful storytelling opportunity and invest us into why it matters that Link succeeds in his journey. The only caveat, no doubt, is the final act's introduction of deities and guardians, which may fall flat on those who haven't played the game. It also may be too cinematically dark for younger audiences, depending on where the studio wishes to take it. Although we won't lie, seeing a fierce deity Link transformation on screen would be badass.
Plummeting in at number 2, Skyward Sword. Chronologically, Skyward Sword takes place at the beginning of the Legend of Zelda timeline, making it only fitting that the studio would choose this as its flagship film.
Boasting a vibrant setting of islands in the heavens known as Skyloft, we would be introduced to our heroes Link and Zelda at their coming of age, and the fate that awaits them from the goddess Hylia. But with looming danger down below on the surface world, the moment our heroes would plummet through the clouds can already be envisioned as a cinematically spectacular moment, both breathtaking for fans of the series and a terrifying surprise for newcomers. Following Link as he tries to keep the imprisoned at bay, deal with his menacing rival Giram, all while trying to prevent the return of Demise, would be utterly enthralling for any moviegoer. Following our hero as he battles through an underwater forest and keeping up while he shifts time in the sands of Lanayru would be a wild ride from a theater seat. Sprinkle in flying Loftwings, the comedic likes of Goose's troop, and the clumsily portrayed Kiwi race, we would expect the on-screen chemistry to hit all the right beats for the whole family from start to finish.
Awakening at our top spot, number 1, Ocarina of Time. From its innocent beginnings to its captivating NPCs, from its dastardly villains to its plethora of legendary weaponry, it is a surprise to few that the Ocarina of Time easily takes the top spot in our countdown.
Imagining a Legend of Zelda film that doesn't draw its inspiration from this game is almost absurd, given its legacy and notoriety among gamers everywhere. It is arguably one of, if not the, classic Zelda story that fans would identify with. As a game that laid the foundation for the world of Hyrule we know today, seeing this adapted onto the big screen would be an inner child's dream. Imagine the cinematography of its lush labyrinthian woods, or the heart-pounding bellows of its raging volcanic death mountain. Consider the immersion of seeing our hero trudging through the literal belly of a whale, or the grotesque moans as he traverses a re-dead infested village or cemetery. The game's unique and idolized temples would surely captivate audiences of all ages, creating new fans while appeasing the old. With its cascade of color palettes and what one could only assume to be the symphonic score we have all dreamed of, producers would be hard-pressed not to acknowledge this game as a primary influence. While the game itself may not be one of the longest, if handled correctly, we firmly believe it could easily be broken into a proper trilogy. The Ocarina of Time, the Temple of Time, and the Hero of Time are just our proposed ideas, if you're listening, Nintendo. The juxtaposition of allowing multiple actors to shine in the role of younger and older versions of the same character would be enthralling, linear, and refreshing. And seeing those different iterations of said characters interact with the Gerudo Prince of Darkness, Ganondorf, would leave us all frothing at the mouth.
And there you have it, everyone, our list of what we think has the greatest chance to be made into a film from the Legend of Zelda gaming franchise.
Now, while we actually have this list compiled as it is, we do understand that there's a good chance the filmmakers and storytellers for
100%.
the new film could be creating an original story. However,
Absolutely.
our list also serves as the films or the games that are most likely to lend certain aspects to this film, such as where we've got the Ocarina of Time in the number 1 spot, we may expect to see more of the Deku Tree, Epona, or even the Ocarina of Time itself, as opposed to Eslo, the Minish Cap.
Yeah. As always, guys, feel free to jump in the comment section and let us know what you think the order of likeliness that they're going to make a film based on one of the games. Maybe your list matches ours, or maybe you have an entirely new one yourself. And as always, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, so you can stay tuned to future stuff that we cover on the Legend of Zelda film. And with that, I am the real Jussy.
I'm Peter Parkour, and like we always say around here,
Keep it real.